All right, happy holidays, everyone. I'm back with another wrestling DVD review. I know it's been a while. I ordered a bunch of wrestling DVDs for Christmas. Taking advantage of all the sales that were going on, especially, during Black Friday and everything. So I'll be making a little bit more reviews coming up on the ones that I got. I got a bunch of like TNA, Ring of Honor, and another shoot interview DVD from RF Video. This one I got, it's from Kayfabe Commentaries. It's the timeline history of WCW 1989 with Jim Cornette. Now, if you're anything like me, you love the wrestling business and you want to learn everything you can possibly learn about behind the scenes of what's going on, what happened, and history of it. So this is why I really enjoy these shoot interviews. And I love, like, Jim Cornette has come out with a bunch of shoot interviews. So he's very, he's been with WCW, WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor. So he's worked with all of the major wrestling companies in the last 20 years. So he has a lot of knowledge. I mean, he was a manager. He has a lot of behind the scenes knowledge. He was the booker. He's also ran his own company, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So he has a lot of stories to tell. And 1989 WCW was I guess a turning point in that company because Ted Turner had bought WCW back in 1988. So everything was kind of changing. So with this with the timeline history, they take the year, whatever it is in the wrestling business, and they talk about it. So basically, he talks a lot about the Midnight Express because he was their manager. Midnight Express, Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton. He talks about they start towards the end of '88 when the Midnight Express, they were baby faces and they're supposed to be in a feud with Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, and they had everything was built up to that feud. And Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson left to go to WWF. And they became the Brainbusters because of a dispute over the contract because they weren't getting paid as much as the other wrestlers. So, and then now Midnight Express didn't have a feud. So somehow they decided they brought back the original Midnight Express, and they were going to start a feud with them. And Cornette said that they brought it in January. They brought in a new booker. I think his name was George Scott. And George Scott was tried to turn everything back. It was like a booker from the late 70s, and it was 1989, but he was trying to book like it was in the late 70s. So he brought back a lot of these old wrestlers. For example, he brought back Iron Sheik, and this is Iron Sheik was not in good shape and couldn't really wrestle that much. I mean, he had knee injuries and stuff, and it wasn't working with Iron Sheik. He was getting $100,000 a year, so they sent him home. When it was time to renew his contract, this is how bad WCW was. When it was time to renew his contract, they forgot that that they have him at home, and because it was like a year that they sent him home, the contract went over another year, so they were basically paying this guy to stay home. Then they figured this out, and they said, "Oh, okay, let's bring him back on TV, let him be a jobber, and put people over." And they turned out he was a horrible jobber, and they just said, "I'll just send him home." And this is how bad WCW was with management. And, they noticed that the ratings were going down, attendance was going down. Jim Cornette was saying how, he also mentioned certain wrestlers did not want to sell for the Midnight Express. And he talked about how there was an incident with the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael Hayes. And Michael Hayes told him that he doesn't sell the racket. How Jim Cornette, as a manager, he used to have his gimmick was he had that tennis racket. And he used to always hit the good guys over the head with the racket or something like that to get heat. And Michael Hayes told him, "Hey, we don't do that, and we don't sell that and stuff like that." So that was, he was talking about about that. Talked about Jim Herd. He became the executive producer, and I don't know if you hear any interviews with Ric Flair talking about Jim Herd. I don't think anybody in the wrestling business has anything good to say about Jim Herd. Jim Herd, I guess, one of those guys that was put into a high position. They didn't know anything about the wrestling business, and Jim Cornette said that he was like horrible with contracts, and he would offer Jim Cornette more money than the Midnight Express because Jim Cornette could do commentating. And he was like saying, well, I really want, we were a package deal, you know, he was going to offer Jim Cornette 125,000, and then the Midnight Express like 75 or something like that, or 100. And it didn't really make sense because, I mean, Midnight Express, they're the ones that, you know, the wrestlers should, I think, get more money than the managers. He talks about, you know, the feud with the Dynamic Dudes. If you go way back, now you could watch all this on the WWE Network. The Dynamic Dudes were Shane Douglas and Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace, if you, he's John Laurinaitis, you know, the general manager, People Power. But back then, they were trying to recreate the Rock and Roll Express, and at the time, you know, I guess skateboards were big, so they tried to make these guys, you know, like the top fan favorites. He was like saying like how like he said it gave the Midnight Express another team to feud with, and he said that he was supposed to have a match with Shane Douglas. It was supposed to be like this long like feud going on, and then finally like the payoff would have been Shane Douglas against Jim Cornette. And something happened where like Shane Douglas got upset or something because he didn't want to sell for Jim Cornette, and he complained to Jim Herd about it. So they had to reshot the match, and it was just like, you know, and Jim Cornette was like saying to Shane Douglas, we're trying to get you over. We're trying to like, I mean, this is like, it's Wrestling 101 where you have the heel manager and the babyface team, and you finally have that moment when the babyface team gets that heel manager, and you know, you get the, you know, at the end you get the 5 minutes alone with them and stuff like that. But like, and then he said, you know, and then they talk about the beginning when Dusty Rhodes was booking WCW in the beginning, and how something happened where they shot an angle, I think maybe late '88, when the Road Warriors were heels, and they did something where they had a spike, and it was on TBS, and they drove like a spike in Dusty Rhodes' eye and blood, and I guess it was too graphic or something, so they decided to, you know, I don't know, they fired Dusty Rhodes, and I think Dusty stayed on maybe a couple weeks as a talent, but then he left for WWE, and so they just, you know, they just go through the whole year, and they're just talking about, he talks about how he has all, what's cool about Cornette is that he has all the books, like he has like, you know, like the booking sheets, the calendars, he has all these records, so he's, you can tell this guy was really organized. And he talks about how, like, you know, the houses were down, ratings were down, you know, and finally, like, Ric Flair, like, stood up and said, you know what, give me the book, and I'll get things back to where they used to be. So then they had the booking committee, and it was like Ric Flair was in charge of it, and he had, like, I think Cornette was on it, and Kevin Sullivan. So basically, Kevin Sullivan and Cornette would work together. They would take Ric Flair's ideas and what he wanted to be done, and they would write the TV. And they saw improvements in the TV. You know, the ratings were going up, clashes were going up. But then the problem was Jim Herd, because he would change everything around. And one of the things he didn't like was Ric Flair. You know, he liked to work with certain wrestlers. Ric Flair wanted to work with Flying Brian. Ric Flair had a match with Ricky Morton from the Rock and Roll Express, and it was going to end with a disqualification or something. And Jim Herd didn't like it because he said our champion can't beat. I guess he didn't like the Rock and Roll Express or something. He said our champion can't beat Ricky Morton or something. So he got upset about that, and I think Ric Flair got tired of it because every time he would change the script or the format. So Ric Flair had enough, and Jim Cornette said that he wrote a letter to Ric Flair wrote a letter like resigning from the booking committee to Jim Herd, saying, you know, every time, you know, I'm taking the company in a direction, you're there to change stuff around. I mean, I was promised to have like complete control, and you know, and then you are interfering in it. So again, you know, it's really, if you love the history of WCW and want to learn behind the scenes, it's a really good DVD. It's at it's 2 disc set right here. First disc is about 2 hours, and then the second disc is about 1 hour and 13 minutes. Here's the back cover too, and you can see him with all his notes from that time period. What sucks about it is that most shoot interviews, sometimes when I watch it, they just go on and on. This one just ends, and you just want more. And they briefly get into 1990, and they talk about the clash when the Horseman kicks Sting out, and then Sting injures his knee, and it changed all the I guess the storylines, because it was supposed to lead into Ric Flair against Sting at, I think, Wrestle War. That was the pay-per-view in February of 1990, and Ric Flair was supposed to drop the title to Sting, but Sting got injured, and they had to like change the plans, and so they had to turn Luger babyface again. So Luger would have to take that spot just to hold, and just to save, just have the matches and stuff and fill in for Sting. But again, it ends, and you just want more. I mean, I could listen to Jim Cornette talk about wrestling for hours. I don't know who they're going to bring in for 1990, but they definitely. I mean, I think they should definitely keep Cornette, because he has the knowledge. I mean, he has the history. He was part of the booking team. He has a lot of stories to tell. Definitely worth checking out.